There are two more champions that have had footage released by XLAU, the chap that I asked for permission to share the PTS stuff that he's been doing with the other prototype champions that are coming out. So the first one was Dark Lord that we talked about. I just want to stress there's no real animations, no models, and all of these abilities may go out of the window and are the unfinished product. But it's just fun to do a bit of a speculation about it and thoughts on what might be coming. It's also likely that the next champion won't be the next update, so in a couple of weeks it'll probably be the one after that, because we've just had two champions released back to back. We could be surprised, but we don't really know. Anyway, let's get on to the nitty gritty. So Flack is the first one, and this champion has 5,300 HP, which heavily implies that they are a frontliner. The left click is an AoE, which if you hit directly, hits an enemy for 399 damage it seems, and then has a drop off in quite a large area. Now this weapon does seem to be like a flat cannon you'd imagine in the real world, and I'm going to go over the other abilities and sort of speculate on what I think this champion is going to be. So the F ability has a 14-second cooldown and seems to be a little bit bugged at the moment. Basically, when a champion has, I think, a build up or goes upwards into the air, in the PTS it bugs out their animation, so it looks like they're going into the ground. This ability does go forwards if you look from where they started to where they end after that sort of bugged animation. And what it does 800 damage and knocks back enemies in front of them. It could be that there's like a charge up time before you charge forwards and knock people back, and that 800 damage is pretty heavy hitting. The next one is a right click, and this has a 6-second cooldown, and this does 200 damage and also does a pretty far knockback. Finally, in the normal abilities, the Q throws out some sort of projectile or moving object which has a shadow in the game world, but doesn't seem to have any effects currently in the PTS, and this might just be because it's unfinished. And finally, the ultimate does damage, 350 it seems, around that amount. It has some knockback because the skies are knocked to the sides, but the only thing is, because of the bugged animation, this also throws you back. It probably has some sort of charge up time, or you go into the air, or you're thrown underground upwards, or something happens which is bugging this out, and we can't see if this stuns, or if it has any sort of effect, and it also leaves some sort of deployable there, but the deployable doesn't seem to have an effect either. So it's hard to speculate exactly what the ultimate does apart from doing a small amount of damage in a large area and knocking people back a little bit. So what are my thoughts when I hear about this champion? So they've got some sort of flat cannon. The idea of the champion is Flack. Now, how would you implement a flat cannon into the game? So the charge gives you ideas of something like a Minotaur or a giant troll sort of creature with a flat cannon on it, charging forwards through enemies, but I think that would be the easy way to go forwards, and I think we might have some sort of steampunky dwarven guy in maybe a plane. I'm thinking gyrocopter in Dota 2, or I'm thinking, I can't remember what exactly it's called, but Bowser sometimes rides in this sort of helicopter thing that floats in the air. I could imagine there's some object that's floating in the air, and what you do is you charge forwards and knock people back with it, and there's a guy in the top, and maybe he's throwing out bombs or clouds that are explosive, and maybe the flak is these explosive clouds, or he's throwing out explosives with a flak cannon from this sort of helicopter or like sort of thing that's floating in the air. When I saw the shadow going across the map very slowly, I just thought of the bombs from Mario as well, the ones that have faces. What's the purpose of this champion? Seems to be some sort of control champion, knocking people off the points, basically splitting them up and making sure they're never together, maybe breaking up the death ball lineup a little bit. And the AoE damage seems to be pretty constant, so you're always putting it out and doing it in an area, although knocking people back seems to go against the idea of doing AoE damage because you want them to be clumped together. The 5,300 HP is pretty high as well, which means they are going to be likely pretty tanky, but I could definitely see some sort of helicopter champion that charges in and knocks people back with the platform that they're flying on. What does everybody else think? What are your theories about Flack? Do you think they might actually be some sort of monster or minotaur or some sort of big being that charges forwards and maybe knocks people back that way and has some sort of flat cannon as well, or maybe something riding on its back with a flat cannon? But I'm going with this sort of like dwarven, sort of steampunky character that's in this flying machine, or maybe even a tank. It could work out that way and you knock people back with the machine. And I think the Paladins devs have been a bit more creative and wacky and more fantasy based when they're going off of their new concepts. That's why I think there might be something a bit more out there. The next one is Rifle, and again these are just code names, but the left click does 520 damage and does 720 damage for a headshot. Left click does have a damage drop off, and it works like a semi-automatic rifle, so if you hold down you keep firing, but it's at a slow rate and basically single shot, and I'm guessing you'd single shot in game if you wanted to be 100% accurate, and that's probably how the pros would play it. The F ability again seems a bit broken, but this one doesn't actually take you forwards anywhere. And this is where a bit of my speculation is coming in, because I think that this might actually take you into the ground, and this character might be a mole person. That's what I'm going off, a mole person. Or it could be something that goes into the ground that burrows, like a sand shrew or something, thinking of like an armadillo, maybe going into a shell, just because it just doesn't go forward. The right click is 400 damage in a very large AoE. Whether this is actually an AoE attack or if it bounces off of enemies, I'm not entirely sure, but it seems to be some sort of explosive. I think the rifle is a bit misleading because it's been put on Tyra, and obviously that's an automatic rifle, and also it has a grenade launcher, so it's not necessarily going to be a grenade launcher, but something that does AoE damage or jumps around people, but it seems to do a flat 400 damage. The Q ability seems to give a critical damage, and the normal damage goes up to 640 per shot over the original 520 damage, and there's a cooldown of 15 seconds on this one. I just generally think this is going to be a damaged champion, and may have that ability to go into the ground to be invulnerable, or something like that. Or it might just shoot them into the air for some reason, and then you fire down from the air, but I'm not sure about that ability, that F ability. Again, I do wonder whether there'll be more of a fantasy element. That's why I was talking about this sort of sand shrew, and maybe it won't actually be a rifle, but will be something that acts like a semi-automatic rifle. So it could be like an armadillo that fires out their armor plating, but like a rifle, and then maybe throws out like one of their razor scales and it bounces between all the enemies in an area, or something like that, just because we already do have two champions that have actual full-on rifles in the game with Victor and Tyra, and we also have pistols with Androxus and Lex. Again, they might just have another rifle champion, and it is called rifle, but I think they might have put that in there to mislead people a little bit, even though it does work like a semi-automatic rifle. But then again, Cassie's crossbow does sort of work like a semi-automatic rifle as well. There isn't an ultimate for this champion, and again, everybody, these are very unfinished, and they haven't actually had these officially put into the game. It's just been with some tweaking on the PTS with the data mining applied on there. Now, what does everybody else think? What's everybody's wildest theories? What do you think these champions are going to be? What sort of aesthetic are they going to have? What their look's going to be? And what do you think about some of the abilities that are a bit buggy at the moment? A lot of people are saying, oh no, Flack's going to be the next champion, but actually when you look at Dark Lord, with the abilities applied in game, they do seem to be a bit more functional than Flack's do, especially the ultimate and the Q. But again, that could be the next champion. It would make sense to have a frontliner put out next, because we haven't had one since Inara, which was quite a few patches ago. But again, I'm more than happy to hear all of your thoughts in the comments section below. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more of my content, and I'll see you all next time. Joshino.